No, I'm going back. Eventually, my sister entered a famous private school on the wishes of our parents. Fuck. Through high quality instruction appropriate for someone of Kazuki's talents, her aesthetic would mature and evolve, bringing her art to an even higher level of sophistication. Yeah, I'm sure that's what'll happen. That was the idea, at least, but my sister deliberately betrayed our parents' overblown expectations, shunning Takazono Academy's Fine Arts Club in favor of the basketball team. Probably one of the biggest mistakes that her grades in academic subjects and PE alike were suspiciously consistent, 70s across the board. Hiding her overwhelming talents, Kazuki pursued a tranquil, everyday life. That sharp tongue of hers still made a few appearances. But in a school for rich young ladies, a slightly thorny attitude was nothing out of the ordinary. On top of which, Kazuki was trying very hard to come off as a pleasant, mild-mannered girl to her classmates. She managed to gather a good number of friendly acquaintances through that act. She'd picked out useful or competent girls from the group for special attention, controlling them like pawns to her own advantage. Well, controlling's probably a bit too harsh. The people my sister manipulated didn't really notice it was happening. Rather than forcing them to do something, she'd just subtly guide them toward certain choices. Yeah. For the most part, they did exactly what Kazuki wanted without even realizing that she was influencing their actions. I was the only one who knew what my sister really was. And that was only because she discussed her real intentions so frankly with me since we were young. Even our parents weren't aware they were dancing on Kazuki's strings. I was deeply, deeply afraid of her. Kazuki can't be human. Maybe she's some kind of god. I was the only one who understood my sister's true nature. But terrifying as she was, I was also completely dependent on her. I assumed that I would keep living in the palm of Kazuki's hand for many years to come. No! Right up until the day she left for her basketball team's summer training camp. No! Hello? It was my sister's first summer vacation since entering Takazono Academy, following a relatively uneventful few months for our strained family. Kazuki was participating in an overnight camp as a member of the Takazono basketball team. For about a week, she would be staying at a campground in Nagano Prefecture. She'd always been at the center of that lopsided family, counteracting the centrifugal forces that would have otherwise ripped us apart. She was the balance shaft that kept our household rotating smoothly, and now, suddenly, she was gone. That week stretched on and on. The anxiety was suffocating, inescapable. It felt as though I'd been left all alone on a sailing boat in a totally calm sea. No! Oh no. Only 2 days after Kazuki left the house, my parents began to argue viciously every time they encountered each other. Okay, you all need to calm down. And if I was unfortunate enough to be somewhere nearby, it would usually end with Dad blindsiding me with harsh words and harassment that I earned simply for being a convenient target. Thanks, Dad. God, I hope you die. The coffee's too damn hot. That was enough of a reason for my father to throw a mug at my head. How about I take that mug and bash you upside the head with it? I'm getting aggressive and stressed out. Shut up. It wasn't the first time something like that had happened. A few days without my sister and we already had fallen apart. Was the absence of God all it took to make people into such ugly creatures? Hey, now that I'm thinking about it, remember when, remember Yuuji with all the God talk to Sachi? Yeah, I remember. Picking up the fragments of that shattered mug. I watched my mother sobbing impotently on the floor, and found myself praying that Kazuki would come home as soon as possible, but I held my breath. I made myself small, like some frightened animal, burrowing deep into the ground. I tried desperately to avoid my father's wrath, waiting for my sister's return. Once Kazuki comes back, once God returns, I wouldn't have to hide myself anymore. All I had to do was keep quiet and endure. This nightmare would end eventually. I was used to enduring this sort of thing. As long as I didn't get greedy, I wouldn't get hurt. I wouldn't suffer too much. I'd just be a little lonely for a while. A little sad. It wouldn't kill me. After all, this bed of nails was only a temporary torment. That miserable week had finally passed, and it was all but over now. Today, while my sister was coming home, God was returning. She was never easy to deal with, but having her around sure beat the alternative. In that respect, I suppose Kazuki really was a divine presence in our lives. People who can laugh off the idea of God don't know how lucky they are. That's only an option for someone who's never found themselves completely helpless. Someone who's never looked up at the sky and screamed through their tears. In the end, my prayers dissolved meaninglessly into the clouds. Oh God. Oh God. Please. My sister didn't get back on time. At first we assumed the bus was caught in traffic, but after a few hours that started to seem less likely. The team's advisor, who had been in charge of the trip, wasn't answering his cell phone. We tried calling Kazuki instead, but heard only another mechanical voice informing us that her phone was turned off or out of range. Yep. I had a bad feeling about it. Me too, Yuuji. I know. I was there. Okay, as I remembered my bitter childhood fantasies of a life without Kazuki, frightening what-ifs flitted through my mind, and I could feel sweat oozing coldly out of my pores. I'd spent years daydreaming about my sister disappearing. What right did I have to expect her to come back and rescue me now? Maybe she'd finally gotten sick of my selfishness and decided to leave for good. No! That sense of guilt grew heavy as a rock in the pit of my stomach when I learned that Kazuki and her classmates had vanished without a trace. Kill me. It was as if their bus had been abruptly spirited off the face of the earth. Despite an all-out search effort by authorities along the route and our local police, 2 weeks crawled by without no progress whatsoever. Yep. Finally, the investigation headquarters set up by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police was dissolved, and the case was entrusted to the National Police Agency as a matter for long-term, wide-scale investigation. To put the matter more simply, they'd halfway given up on finding him. Yeah, what the fuck's up with that? Local search efforts did continue, now personally funded by the families of the missing girls, but to no avail. Eventually, there was even talk that it might have been a mass kidnapping organization by a foreign country. Nope, it's not that. And in the home to which my sister never returned, oh God, don't bring me here. My father, his principal source of income gone, ranted and raved in near frenzy. My mother, unable to oppose her husband, could do nothing but grieve and cry. I hid myself quietly in the shadows of our house as our house filled with darkness. And one night, I snuck into my sister's studio to gaze at her half-finished paintings. Oh no, my sister can't possibly be dead. Kazuki's above death. Huh. Blind faith was all I had clinging to me now. Maybe this disappearance was part of my sister's plan. Maybe she was living a totally different person somewhere. As one, in fact. Enjoying the freedom and normality she desperately longed for. These ridiculous delusions at least allowed me to hold on to some fragile shred of hope. But in the end, even that meager refuge shattered to pieces. No. A single student who had been on the basketball team trip with my sister was discovered in a farmer's field, where she'd been greedily devouring cabbage after cabbage. I know I would have, Amine. Don't worry about it. The girl was emaciated and exhausted, but managed to explain the situation to the local policeman, who rushed her to the to her hospital room. Ah! No! I don't want to be here! On the way back, the team had taken an old, unused mountain road to avoid congestion. Their tire had been punctured, and the bus plunged down a cliff in a section of the road with no guardrail. Fortunately, the bus didn't catch fire after it stumbled down the slope, but it had landed on the bottom of a deep natural hole separated from the road by thick greenery that made discovery unlikely. And of course, their cell phones were out of range. As for leaving to summon help on their own, the walls of the valley sloped over them, making it impossible to climb back up. There was a possibility of escape through the dense virgin forest at the very bottom of the gorge, but there were many wounded, so the group opted for a conservative plan of waiting for help while conserving their supplies. No! This is where they fucked! Well, at the bottom of the forest, so thick that light barely reached them, the team endured for 2 long weeks. Finally, their limits of physical and mental endurance long since passed. The girls mustered their last ounces of strength for a desperate escape attempt. She was the only one to get out alive. When the police resumed their search based on the survivor's testimony, they found the fallen bus without much difficulty. You know, I wish that would have happened, like, weeks prior. It was now a crumpled wreck, lying at the bottom of a rocky gorge below an abandoned road. On the site, they found signs of a struggle, involving multiple individuals, along with numerous mutilated corpses. Oh God. Some already decomposed to the bone. My sister's death was officially confirmed in mid-September. Okay. Hold the hoozle. Now hold on. So they're eating people. But like, it's not actually. You know what? Never mind. I'm still convinced she's in the basement. Dude, if she is the person in the basement, you all owed me $1. All right, for guruing the shit out of this. The Takazono Academy bus disaster. Many details regarding this incident were deliberately concealed from the public, and the media supplemented its facts with exaggerated speculation, leading to a popular narrative that differed significantly from the truth in many. I thought it was going to continue, but then there was no period. But at the time, I had no way of knowing that. In any case, there was only one fact that seemed relevant for the Kazami family. Oh no. The death of my sister. No, she's fine. I assure you. No, stop it! The death of God! No, it's fine! It was too much to accept. My father raged. My mother wept. I actively refused to believe it. Okay, I hate how the dad literally only is like, my cash cow's gone. Fuck this dude. I hope he dies. Well, the mom just sits there doing fucking nothing. Like, god damn it. Kazuki can't possibly be dead. No matter how many times I repeated those childish words to myself, my sister wasn't coming back. With the passage of time, we slowly began to accept that fact, and our family began to crumble under its weight. Despair spread through the house like a cancer. The fragile bonds that had tied us together rotted away with frightening speed. Dude, we have no bonds. My father was devastated. His overblown expectations for my sister's future had come to nothing. Dude, I'm salty. Sorry, guys. I hate characters like this. I hate the dad. All the money he'd spent on her education was now just another investment gone bust. One by one, the companies which had offered financing in anticipation of Kazuki's career abandoned him. Yeah, fuck him. Well, I say that, but we're stuck here in this past. Once the last lines of credit dried up, we no longer had any real source of income. Our living conditions deteriorated visibly from week to week. My family had always been a brittle, makeshift thing. Now with our only pillar of hope gone, that ramshackle structure gave up even trying to hold itself together. We'd lost the energy to maintain the farce. Wallowing in self-pity over his misfortune, oh, boo-hoo! My father began drinking heavily nearly every day. Uh-oh, that's not good for us. Yuuji, hide. His mistreatment of my mother and me escalated into clear abuse. Mom, come hide with me. Okay, I hate him, and I'm trying to contain the rage. He hit the bars until dawn with less than savory friends, often ending up in the drunk tank for bellowing at some hapless waitress. When he did manage to stagger home, he beat Mom, screaming, "I'm the master of this house." Man, if I was his mom, I would have beaten the shit out of him. I would have fought back. I mean, you know, I say that, but you're in a situation like this, it's kind of, especially being the kind of personality she is. No, Mom hadn't done anything wrong, but she still apologized every time he started hitting her. Dude, fuck this dude. Again and again, desperately. I'm sorry. Not even knowing what she was apologizing for, she groveled with her forehead to the ground, whimpering the words like a terrified animal waiting for the storm to blow past. My mother was a very weak person. Yeah, I know. I got that. In the old man's words, she was a woman with nothing going for her but her looks. Wow. He seemed to think he'd done her a real favor picking her up out of the bars where she'd been working for lack of any other way to support herself. Even I could tell that Dad had never treated her particularly well. That's because this guy doesn't treat anyone particularly well. Because he deserves death. Still, she'd given birth to the golden egg. Her position as Kazuki's mother guaranteed her a fairly comfortable life but now that role had been taken away from her, and she had nothing left to defend herself with. A knife? The same was true for me. With no way to fight back, I had no choice but to endure my father's irrational violence. I was essentially a living punching bag for him to vent his anger on. Man, just you wait, buddy. One night when he came home particularly drunk, Mom pushed me into the wardrobe. Uh-oh.
ここに隠れていなさい。お父さんはまたきっとすぐに寝てしまうから。
No.
私がいいと言うまではここから出てきてはダメよ。
No, Mom. No! Don't be a hero! I don't think she was worried about my safety for its own sake. Well, now that Kazuki was gone, my mother had simply grown dependent on me. I was really the only ally she had left.
あなたのためにお母さん頑張るから。
Telling herself that was probably the only way Mom could see living as anything but a source of meaningless pain. The idea of protecting her only remaining child was a convenient means of bolstering her courage against the temptation to die. No, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear beating. I don't want to hear nothing. We endured for 3 months, trembling at every sound from the front door once night fell. Finally, my mother could take no more, and the two of us left that hellish house hand in hand. Uh-oh. Okay. There weren't any relatives to take us in. Mom had never held a job outside of a nightclub and knew little of the world. With no real plan, we fled to Mobara in Chiba, the city where she'd grown up. Oh God, and the music. She rented an apartment not far from her childhood home and told me that we'd be living there as a family of 2 from now on. Only 2 weeks later, before we'd settled in, my father tracked us down. I figured he fucking would. Well, I was hoping we could, but, ow. Oh, please, no, stop. Screaming with rage, he kicked my mother to the ground, kicking and punching her viciously, and for the first time in my life, I stood up to him. Yeah! Stop it, Dad! Mom didn't do anything wrong! I'm gonna kick... My father's eyes went wide at my unexpected interference. Releasing his grip on his wife's hair, he turned and struck me hard in the side of the face. Dude, he needs to be smacked down. Oh god, the impact was so strong I could feel my brain rattle against my skull. Stunned, I fell down onto my backside. I was only a child. No matter how hard I fought, I couldn't hope to match the sheer strength of a grown man. You can with weapons. Still, I couldn't just crawl away. Now that Kazuki was gone, it was my job to protect Mom. She was the only thing I had left. And I understood that all too well, how miserable it felt to have no one on your side. I clung stubbornly to my father's legs, holding on even as his brows grew increasingly brutal. Or blows, not brows. Mom had found the will to live by protecting me. And by taking that beating for her, it felt as though I'd discovered some point to my own existence. Maybe this was the real reason I'd been born. True, I was defective compared to my big sister, but now that she was gone, I wasn't so meaningless anymore. I was the backup, the one who'd bear the brunt if Kazuki died. It all felt very clear to me now. No. Ow. Okay. My father swung his arm down furiously, catching me square in the temple. Ooh! Not the temple. The cheap gold watch on his wrist must have struck my face. There was a dull crunching sound from my nose. Lukewarm blood began oozing slowly down my forehead. Ooh. When Mom saw the blood on my face, her voice rose to a frantic scream. This guy is just... Oh, I can't stand this. It's like apologizing to someone who's literally the problem. Oh my god. Holy Jesus. Okay, well. In the end, I suffered a cut to my forehead, or to my head that would take 8 stitches to close. Mom apologized countless times as my father ground his foot against her head, and the 3 of us went back home. I don't know, like, here's the thing, I get it. I get the situation. I get it's way harder when you're actually in the situation. But, like, for me personally, even as a kid, I knew when something, like, Yuuji knows this is fucked up. But, like, he doesn't have that personality to, like, at least now, to do something about it. Like, for me, if my dad, which my dad was probably the best dad ever, but I'm as an example, if my dad was, like, beating my mom and me, even as a child, I'd try to go to the police, even as a kid. I know that sounds crazy, but that's just the kind of person I am. And I've been, I don't take shit from nothing, even as a kid. But, as I said, it's harder when you're actually in that situation. And I'm not like, I don't know, it's just, I'm trying to not state the obvious, but Kazuki wasn't waiting for us there. Feels bad. Nothing had changed since we left. The god of that house was dead, and there was no replacing her. Nah, she's fine. Still, for a while after we returned, my father was unusually quiet. Maybe the man was sobered by what he'd done. What? Once or twice, he even apologized. The fuck? But that period of relative calm didn't last long. Alright, well, head off to more sad. We were quickly eating through the money Kazuki had left behind, and my father couldn't adjust to our newly meager lifestyle. His debts accumulated until we were all but buried under their weight. And as his fears about the future grew, Dad once again started to quiet his anxiety through explosions of violence. Of course he did. Nothing was going to change. If we stayed with this man, he was just going to drag us down with him. For the second time, Mom and I decided to leave. We'd messed up on our first try. He found us because we ran to such a familiar place. This time, we were going to go someplace where nobody knew us. Some town we'd never even seen before. When you're trying to lay low, the basic rule is to look for an area with a large population and a high rate of residential turnover. But my mother, naturally enough, didn't know that at the time. So after a few hours of transferring from train to train, seemingly at random, we arrived somewhere in the rural southwest of Gunma Prefecture. I don't recall it too or clearly. I was still a child being pulled along by his mother, and it was all a little overwhelming. But I do remember it was a quiet country town about 40 minutes from the central Takasaki station. Mom had walked out of the door with nothing but the clothes on her back, telling my father she was taking me shopping. Ha! Good lie. Given the circumstances, we hadn't been able to take much money. At a small real estate agency on the outskirts of town, nearly half of our escape fund vanished for the deposit on a one-story rental house. I mean,
ここが今日から私とユージの住むお家よ。
this isn't so bad. Maybe, it's only gonna get sadder from here. Mom wanted privacy from the neighbors, but renting a detached house had been a real financial stretch. The place we found hadn't been inhabited in years. It was as desolate and dusty as a haunted house. There wasn't even a flush toilet. Whoa! Yeah, never mind, I take this back. This place is a shithole. In itself, it wasn't exactly the most pleasant place you could call home, but the only thing that really mattered was that Mom and I had it to ourselves. Dad wasn't there. That was enough to make even a shabby house feel like paradise. Mom had her name removed from our old certificate of residence and appealed to have our change of address information restricted, given her status as a victim of domestic violence. After explaining the circumstances to the local school, she handled the procedures for my transfer as well. We had a home, and I had a school to attend, but we barely had time to catch our breath before the main problem reared its ugly head. Yeah, to put simply, there was no money. After a week spent sighing at her repeatedly thinning wallet, Mom steeled herself and went out to find employment. Her days were spent working part-time at a canning factory, her nights as a hostess in a snack bar near the station.
もうね、私にはユージしか残ってないの。あなたが一人前になって自分で働いて暮らしていけるようになるまでは私が頑張るから何も心配しなくていいのよ。
Thanks, Mom. Mom was orphaned so young that her education effectively ended before she left middle school. Determined to keep me from suffering the same hardships, she threw herself into a grueling work schedule. In the mornings, I left the house with her when she headed out for her part-time job at the cannery. As we walked together, Mom pushing along the beat-up old bicycles she bought used, our neighbors would stare with undisguised hostility and whisper to each other, "What do you mean? The woman who ran away from the city to ditch her husband? Bitch! Shut up, alright?" That was the only name they knew my mother by in that insular little town. When someone said that woman in our neighborhood, there was no mistaking who they meant.
おはようございます。
God. When she greeted them, there was no response. Wow. Oh, I want to escape my husband that's beating me. Apparently, I'm a bad person for that. Fuck you, alright? Get out of here. But once we passed by, we could hear whispers from behind our backs. What was that? I don't remember becoming her friend. Hey, how about I kill you too? Well, And if Mom opted for nothing but a silent nod instead, it would be, I can't tell what's going on inside that woman's head. When you get right down to it, they didn't like having some strange outsider and her child in their neighborhood. This is our neighborhood now. The place had that quasi-medieval atmosphere typical of small rural towns. The fact that we'd come from Tokyo seemed to invite hatred. It didn't help that Mom was a single mother with no local ties. We were basically ostracized. Yeah, but still, seasons changed, but the eyes of our neighbors never grew any warmer. The only locals who welcomed my mother's arrival were the male customers at the snack bar by the station. Oh, I don't like where this is going. That night job must have contributed to her negative reputation as well. One day, a classmate at school used a word I'd never heard before. Honestly, didn't know what it meant. So when I got home that afternoon, I asked my mother. Somebody told me your mom's a whore. Oh, at school today. What does that mean? That's fucked up. Sometimes innocence can be crueler than malice. Dude. Meeting my gaze, Mom forced a quavery, defeated smile onto her face and said only, I'm sorry.
ごめんね、ユージ。ごめんなさい。
I didn't have the first idea why she was apologizing to me. It was more irritating than anything else, but I did understand that I must have said something I shouldn't have. Yuuji, we should just kept that to ourselves, buddy. What does Mom have to apologize for me anyway? She's protecting me, isn't she? Mom was working hard to support the two of us. She didn't have a thing to be ashamed of. There was no reason for her to be sorry. Even as a child, or maybe exactly because I was a child, I believe that absolutely. My mother was a kind person, but no one treated her kindly. She'd finally managed to escape Dad, but she was still apologizing every time she opened her mouth. Very quickly, I learned to hate the words, I'm sorry. I wanted to grow up right away. Watching my mother sacrifice herself to keep me fed was just too frustrating. I needed to become an adult so I could help her too. At that young age, I was already starting to strain for something like self-sufficiency. Still, there wasn't much I could actually do to contribute, with the exception of washing the rice and setting our cooker when Mom came home drunk from her bar. To be honest, my mom wasn't the best cook even when she was sober. Back when she was living on her own as a hostess with a nocturnal lifestyle, she mainly got by on convenience store lunches and the snacks her customers brought her at work. And even after she married and became a mother, we usually ate out or had something delivered. It wasn't pretty rare. It was definitely pretty rare for her to make an actual meal. When she told me we were going to cook for ourselves from now on to save money, all I could think was, wonder how long that's gonna last. As it turned out, our dinners were mostly canned food Mom took home from her part-time job, plopped onto a plate. Hey, I'm fine with that. Supplemented by very basic stir-fried or boiled dishes. And late in the month, as our money ran low waiting for the next paycheck, there were days where we had nothing but fried rice on our table. Oh, I've been there. I know that life.
今日はこれしかないの。
Nah, it's...
ごめんね。
Oh, it's... Stop apologizing. It was a shoddy-looking lump of rice with fish paste or frozen vegetables as the only other ingredients. But I was used to simple food, and I didn't mind the taste. The only thing I hated about those meals was hearing my mother apologize as she put them on the table. Every time she reflexively muttered, I'm sorry, I thought of all the times she said that phrase before. A chain of meaningless words stretching back into the past. It made me sad for reasons I couldn't express. Jesus. We carried on like that for a full year. It definitely wasn't an easy situation, but I tried to lessen my mother's burden by adjusting to our frugal new lifestyle as best I could. I didn't need anything more. Well, a decently sized fridge would have made things a little more convenient. Not exactly a Charles Dickens novel, just a humble life. It wasn't so bad. I could go through my daily routine without causing problems for anyone else. I had enough food that I wouldn't starve. When I was injured or sick, I could go to the doctor. The two of us just had to scrape along like this for a while. Eventually, I'd start working, and we'd be able to afford a little more in the way of luxuries. Oh God, no. But just as that modest hope was starting to take root in my heart, it was ripped away by a terror I'd nearly managed to forget. Dad found us again. Uh-oh, this is not gonna be good, because she said she wouldn't do it again. And then he found us. No, it's over. He appeared abruptly one evening, just as my mother was putting on her makeup in preparation for her night job at the snack bar. Oh God. Now hold on. How can he just track us so easily? Well, I mean, not easily. I guess it was a year, but still, he's able to just continuously find us. The fuck is this man? I had no idea how he discovered our whereabouts. But at that moment, I was less shocked by my father's sudden arrival than by how dramatically he changed. The stench of alcohol wafted from his body, stinging my nose. He'd always been a slender man. Now his cheeks were hollow. His clouded eyes, sunken deep in their sockets, reflected the dim electric light with a sickly sheen. Glaring at the two of us as we stood there in shock, my father pushed his way into the room. No, hey! Oh, well, and taking my mom's wallet from her handbag, he pulled out the 3 1,000 yen bills remaining inside and thrust them toward me. How's about no? Taking the 3 bills he'd practically slapped onto my chest, I looked up at my mother with pleading eyes. Also, I can't buy booze, can I? I'm a child. What do we do? What should I do? Just say the word. Tell me to fight, and I'll throw myself at him without the slightest hesitation. Mom answered my unspoken words with the pitifully artificial smile I knew so well.
ごめんね、ユージ。お願い、お酒買ってきてくれる？
Us leaving's really bad because we're gonna come back. I guess I could buy alcohol, but we're gonna come back, and she's either going to be dead or just beaten, like, basically to an inch of her life. That smile made me incredibly sad. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go anywhere. A year earlier, just before Mom and I fled, my father had owed his creditors about 32 million yen. I had no way of knowing exactly how that man spent that year, but it's probably safe to assume he kept a less than responsible lifestyle. In fact, it seems he sunk so deeply into self-indulgence that his debt ballooned to many times its original size. And just to top things off, his latent alcoholism had returned with a vengeance. The man had ignored us totally for a year after our escape. Why track us down now? What was the point? I had to assume he was looking for money, a little bit. Not that we had any to give him, of course. Mom had apparently been putting aside what little she could in hopes of sending me to college, but we were struggling just to keep food on the table. Everything we had wouldn't have made a dent in the amount he owed. It was indescribably frustrating to buy that man alcohol with money Mom and I had saved by pinching every penny. Still, neither of us knew how to fight back. Man, punching him in the fucking dick, that's how you... Anyway, as I returned home after buying a 2-liter bottle of shoshu at the neighborhood supermarket, a grimy little K car parked near our house caught my eye. On my way out, still reeling from shock, I hadn't even noticed it was there. It must have been the vehicle my father had driven here. Had he sold off the foreign car he used to own for some quick cash? Peering in the window as I passed, I could make out a pile of empty Chuhai cans and a dirty blanket inside. My father must have been living out of that thing. Pathetic. Yeah, a man who drove a car like that had sunk in his claws into us yet again. What was going to happen to Mom and me now? Even for a child, the thought was enough to prompt a nauseating wave of fear and disgust. I do not want to get back in there. Oh God. I hate him. I wish he'd just die. Do it, Yuuji! Consume yourself with the dark side! The words oozed up from somewhere deep inside me like a toxic sludge. A shiver ran down my spine. Am I a bad person for wanting this man dead? Like, we know, right? But still, maybe I just feel like when I wish death, like, I don't know. Like, I really shouldn't, but I feel like some people just deserve death. I get. Look. When you wish for something like that, it might come back to haunt you someday. Just like when my sister died. I'll regret it in the end. Oh God. Regret it? Really? The demon. Would I really feel anything if that leech of a man ended up dead? Just knowing that I'd bought that bottle of alcohol for him, I could barely keep myself from smashing it against the ground. I would have smashed it up against his head. How much could I regret the death of someone like him? I don't know. Oh. I squeezed the bottle of shochu tightly and bit my lower lip, trying to calm down, but in that moment, I heard glass breaking in the house and Mom screamed, "Mom! No! Bash it over his head! Kill him!" A bewildering storm of emotions surged through me. Uncertainty, fear, anger. But even so, I knew I had to help Mom. Rushing forward in a panic, I burst into the house.
お前は金の卵を産むガチョウだ。もう一度天才を産ませてやる。そうすりゃ、俺はまた。
Well, this is way worse than I could possibly imagine. When I pushed open the door, I was greeted by the sight of my father, his eyes bloodshot and clouded with madness, forcibly pressing my mother against the ground. His dark reddish penis stood out against her pale naked body. Okay, now's the time we bash him over the head with this thing. Please. Mom! That's definitely woo-woo.
Yuuji, てめえちゃんと酒は買ってきたのか?
Bash him, destroy him, kill him!
買ってきたんなら、そこに置いて、てめえは出てけ。しばらく帰ってくるんじゃねえぞ。
He's literally done everything worse. Everything that you could do bad, he has done. Which means death. Stop it, Dad. What are you doing to her?
うるせえ。ぶっ飛ばされてえのか。とっととどっか行け。外で遊んでこい、クソガキが。
Can't play when knowing something like this is happening.
Yuuji, 行きなさい。私なら大丈夫だから。
No, don't listen to her. Don't listen.
まともに子育てもできなかったお前が一丁前に母親面してんじゃねえよ。
Well, roaring with anger, my father smacked Mom in the face. Even as she cried out, my mother forced that pathetic excuse for a smile onto her face, her eyes pleading me to flee. No, don't do it. The bitter taste of helplessness filling my mouth. I left the bottle of alcohol on the tatami mat, tearing my back, and ran out the door. Well, we ain't a hero yet. I ran away. I abandoned my mother. I couldn't stop him. I was a child. What else was I supposed to do? The excuses came easily enough, but I was still ashamed of myself. All the talk about helping my mother. In the end, I deserted her. I mean, realistically though, what were we gonna do? Like, we're a kid. Even if we smash him over the head with this bottle, like, it's not like we're the strongest thing in the world yet. So, like, what the fuck are we? We would also be murdered. I say also. You know what I mean. What if something terrible happened to Mom? Oh yeah, something terrible's happening. Already. Stupid. Something terrible already was happening. Oh, see? Mom was crying. She was crying over her powerlessness. And I wasn't any different. Even as I watched Mom suffering, I cringed at my father's rage. And then I ran away without doing a thing. Without even trying. At this rate, nothing was going to change. No one was ever going to save us. Our neighbors hated trouble. They'd probably slam the door in my face if I asked for help. I thought about going to the police, but if we made this into something serious, we'd end up being forced to move all over again. Dude, I would not give a shit. Like, sometimes you need involvement. Just the thought of it was frustrating. And the thought of some bored policeman in a dingy little station steering, can't you solve your own family squabbles, was downright infuriating. Okay, hold on. What would Kazuki have done at a time like this? She would have planned for every eventuality. Also, this wouldn't have happened because Kazuki was the pillar. Of course, she would have used her head and come up with some clever solution to fix everything. But I was no genius. Idiots can't solve their problems in one neat stroke. Still, even an idiot can learn how to blunder their way forward eventually. Even if it didn't work the first time, we could just look for another chance to run away from Dad. We just had to start over from square one. Again. As many times as it took. Holding on to that newfound determination, I stopped in my tracks and then headed back toward the house as fast as I could manage. I was worried about my mother. I could see her being beaten, punched, kicked, apologizing again and again, answered by more blows. Oh, it's way worse now. My imagination urged me on until my legs couldn't keep up. Frustration built inside me with every stride. By the time I reached home, my heart was pounding like an alarm bell, and my mind was simmering with anger. Oh. I slipped quietly into the house, trying not to give myself away, and inside I found my mother being raped by my father. Yes. Mom.
うめえ。相変わらずいい体してるぜ、お前は。
I am uncomfortable. The room was filled with a choking animal stink. The wet slapping of skin against skin reverberated against the walls. In the light of the setting sun, slanting in through the window, I could see my mother's face, limp with defeat. Her eyes were unfocused. And when I took in the bizarre sight of my father biting into her breast with an expression of deranged pleasure on his face, the first thought that popped into my head was a childish misunderstanding. He's eating Mom. Oh, Yuuji. Stop it. Get over her.
えめえ何戻ってきてんだよ。しばらく帰ってくんなって言っただろうが。邪魔すんだ。このクソガキが。
Murder's the only option, Yuuji. Oh, well, I jumped forward instinctively to pull Dad away. He hit me with all his strength. Oh, the ruthless backhand blow smashed into the side of my face. As I fell, stunned to the ground, I remember feeling some strange object inside my mouth. The instant I realized it was a fragment of a broken tooth, I lost consciousness. Oh, yeah, and he probably still kept going with it because he's a fucking... When I opened my eyes again, about an hour had passed. Oh, the room had grown dim and my vision was blurry. I could only just make out my mother, her body covered in filth. She lay perfectly still, completely drained of the will to resist. The man was still raping her. Jesus Christ! I'll kill him. Yes! The demon! A flash of white-hot anger ran through me. In an instant, the passive thought, I wish he'd just die, had been transformed into a concrete urge to kill. Yes! I shouldn't feel good about this, but I do. Stand up. Fight back! Nothing was ever going to change if we kept running away. Nothing was going to change unless I changed myself. No matter how bitter reality might be, I had to face it. I had to fight back. There was no other choice. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. I feel like I'm the demon. What is... As the words rang out like a siren inside my mind, I reflexively reached out and took the bottle of alcohol. Yes! I shouldn't feel good, but I do. Still sitting on the floor where I'd left it. Fierce anger pulsed through me until it felt like my head would burst. And cutting through it all, I thought I heard my sister's voice.
文字を書いたり箸を持つのは右。ボールを投げたりバッターボックスに立つときは左。
Thank you, Kazuki.
じゃあ、人を殺すときはどっちの手？
Jesus. With my right hand, I lifted the bottle over my father as he grunted and thrusted his hips, and I swung down onto the back of his head as hard as I could. BAM! Get fucked, you loser! Okay, a jarring impact ran through my arm as glass met skull. With a tremendous crashing sound, the bottle shattered against my father's head. And then stab him in the neck a few times with the Sharpie bits. Covered in alcohol and jagged fragments of glass, my father let out a few groans, then went still. Mom, are you okay? Come on, get up. We have to get out of here. Oh, God. I bent down and helped Mom from underneath my father's limp body. I tried to pull her toward the door, but she didn't move. Her face was swollen, covered in vicious, dark red bruises, and her eyes were dull and unfocused.
Yuuji.
Yes. That name was... that was a name my mother used to call me when I was much, much younger. It was pretty girly, so I didn't really like it at the time. Sometimes it made me think Mom wanted a girl instead. I remember getting angry every time she used it. Mom, let's get out of here, okay? This time we'll go somewhere really far away.
そうね。また逃げなきゃね。
In response to my voice, Mom's mouth curved into a weak, strangely resigned grin. Somehow, it wasn't quite the same as her usual forced smile.
でもどこまで逃げればいいんだろうね。いつまで逃げればいいのかしら。
As she mumbled those words, her gaze turned to my father, lying quietly on the ground with his back turned to us. He hadn't even twitched since the blow to his head. That was good job, Yuuji.
ごめんね。ゆうちゃんは足が速いから走って逃げなさい。私はこの人が私たちを追ってこれないようにするから先に逃げなさい。お母さん後から行くから。
Am I the only one that has a really bad feeling about this? Like, this doesn't sit right with me right now. Mom. Mom slowly picked up her battered body off the floor. Taking a small drawstring bag, she slipped in our bank book and seal, added the cash left in her wallet, and then hung it around my neck. All the money we'd been saving little by little was in that bank account. Uh-oh. I don't like where this is going.
これが私たちの全財産。なくさないようにしっかり持っているのよ。ほら、早く逃げなさい。
Run? To where? Her mouth again pushing itself into a grin, Mom tilted her head absent-mindedly.
そうね。とりあえず、駅かな。
As she mumbled those words, her eyes staring vacantly up at the ceiling, I thought I could smell the reek of death wafting from her body. My mother seemed to be gazing into some far-off place, a place outside the world. I swallowed a wad of spit. It felt like a rock in my throat.
大丈夫？ゆうちゃん、一人で行ける？
The question frightened me for reasons I didn't understand. I nodded my head vigorously. It's fine. I'm not a kid anymore. I can go on my own. When I spoke those words, my mother's face bloomed into a pure, genuine smile.
そっか。だったら、一人で頑張って。ほら、もう行きなさい。
I feel like, based on all of that we're never gonna see her again. It was an innocent expression. A 10-year-old girl's smile. Another jolt of instinctive fear ran through me. I burst out the door and took off toward the station. I ran, trying to escape my own terror. It followed. I could almost hear its footsteps tapping steadily behind me. It's okay. We know we have the demon. It's fine. I ran desperately, gulping down air, the world a blur, until finally I was in front of the station. After catching my breath, I sat down on a bench to wait for my mother. Reaching up to the drawstring bag around my neck, I squeezed it tightly in my hand. A powerful wave of anxiety passed down on my chest. What were we going to do now? It's fine. We'll figure something out. I wasn't really convinced of that. But forcing myself to think it'll all work out somehow was the only way I could keep the fear from crushing me under its weight. I sat there completely alone, listening to the shrill cries of the insects. By the time I looked up at the clock mounted on the side of the station building, it was already past 11. The air was starting to grow uncomfortably cold. Just as I was beginning to regret not taking my jacket, an ambulance screamed by on the road in front of the station. The startling wail of a siren instantly fanned the flames of my anxiety. Dad must be dead. It wouldn't be surprising, after all. I hit him as hard as I could. I was trying to kill him. I'd murdered my own father. And then I'd ran away and left my mother behind, all by herself. What good am I if I can't protect Mom at a time like this? Why was I even born? Throwing myself up off the bench, I set out at a sprint back toward our house. No, Yuuji. Hold on, Mom. I'm coming, Yuuji. I think if we go there, we're gonna see something really bad. My mother was a weak person. When Kazuki was alive, she'd been indifferent to me, but I wouldn't exist without her. She gave birth to me. She took me with her when she ran. I owed her everything. If I ran away now, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Much, much more than having killed my own father. I rushed down to the familiar streets that led to our house, wanting nothing more than to see my mother again. Yuuji, don't. Just like that day when I'd sprinted all the way to the canning factory to meet her after work. I ran. Oh, God. There was an ambulance sitting in front of our house. Many onlookers had gathered around it. Voices forced their way to my ears. Oh, God. Stabbed him with a kitchen knife. Oh. Apparently it was a murder-suicide. Yep. I heard they found a note. Renting a house just to kill yourself in it. Honestly, a nuisance right until the very end. Okay. Yeah, I figured this would happen. That's why I didn't want Yuuji to go back. With every whisper, my heart throbbed painfully in my chest. As I elbowed my way through the crowd, some of the people from the neighborhood noticed me and raised their voices in alarm. Ignoring their completely superficial words of concern, I made my way to the front door. A man in an EMT vest stopped me. But I live here. As I struggled to get past him, two other paramedics made their way outside, carrying a stretcher covered in a white sheet. A man's arm was hanging limply out to the side. A cheap gold watch glinted dully on his wrist. See, I'm not worried about him. He could... Oh, Dad really is dead. I killed him. I murdered someone. I murdered my father. He deserved it. I killed him with my own hands. Actually, you killed him with a bottle. For an instant, the world went dark before my eyes. Dad's corpse was being hauled out of the house like a pile of junk. He died a miserable, undignified death. It was a shock, but at the same time, I felt strangely calm. I was watching strangers carry my father's body away, and yet I felt neither sadness nor pity. It was exactly what he deserved. Now we'd finally be safe. Those were the only thoughts that came to mind. No, Yuuji. The reality of his death hadn't really sunk in. My emotions were spinning around so violently that the centrifugal force had carried off all empathy, leaving a cold vacuum behind. Oh no, the faint sound of creaking wood slipped through my ears and echoed in the emptiness of my mind. What's that noise? Yuuji, don't. Yuuji, yeah, there it is. I told you, Yuuji. I told you not to go back. I told you not to go back, Yuuji! You know what? Why is it don't do this. Why do you have to do this slow? Just fucking pan up. Yep. The fuck, Blizzard? And the next thing I saw as I stood stock still in the doorway was my mother, hanging from a beam in the ceiling. Even dangling from the rope with her back turned to me, I recognized her instantly. She looked just as she had when I bolted out of the house. The paramedic had his arm around my shoulders. He was trying to drag me out of there, but my eyes were fixed on my mother's corpse and my feet were rooted to the floor. Another EMT in the room was reaching up to my mother to try and lower her from the ceiling. As he grabbed her leg, my mother's body turned suddenly on the rope. Her wide open eyes met mine. My legs turned to water. Ooh, that's not good or anything. At first, I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. The person who had been my mother was now a thing, an inanimate object. Some part of me probably understood that, but I didn't know how to process it. The first thing I felt wasn't grief or pity. It was simply terror, far stronger than anything I'd ever known. And it's got he's lost it. If this is how it was gonna end, we never should have run away in the first place. If this is what was waiting for me, I never should have come back. But I never imagined it could end like this. Not in my worst nightmares. When I closed my eyes, I could feel the contents of my head spinning violently in circles. No, it was the world that was spinning. I was frozen in the very center of hell, and the earth was rotating around me. The world spun, lurching on its tilted axis. Round and round and round. My sister could keep her balance no matter how the world swayed, but she was gone. True despair is a strange thing. It smothers you so completely that you can't even recognize what you're feeling is despair. Round and round and round and round. My eyes wouldn't stop spinning. It was making me sick. I lost consciousness on the spot.
おい、大丈夫か君。しっかりしろ。
The paramedics took me into custody and brought me to the hospital. Oh God. I need a break. I need a break from that. Although, like, I told you, Yuuji, don't go back. You should have not went back, buddy. I figured, based on what she was doing and what she was saying and her action, what she was looking, how she was looking, I figured that was gonna happen. But Yuuji, please, he still went back. But no sympathy for our dad though. Like honestly, fuck that dude. I'm taking a break. Enjoy your hour episode of depression. And we'll be back.